All right, here we are in ZBrush. I'm going to go ahead and hit the comma key to get rid of the light box there. And I'm going to take the Z plugin menu right here. I'm going to take that little white dot. I'm going to drag it over here to this left docking station. You can just double click this left side if you need to open that up. And we're going to go into FBX Export Import. By the way, if you're new to ZBrush, go to my YouTube channel. There's the Intro to ZBrush Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. That'll get you up and running in ZBrush no problem, especially Part 1. That'll get you through anything you need to know for this section here. But basically, we're going to go to Z plugin here, and we're going to go to Import. Under the FBX Export Import, we're going to go to Import, go to where we have our FBX that we exported. There's our girl statue no mask. Let's go ahead and double click that. That's going to import the FBX geo and go ahead and apply our TIFF as a texture. So we're going to go ahead and drag that out, go into edit mode. You're going to see first off, she seems very red. Well, that's because we have a Materialist sign that has a lot of red built in. If, for instance, if you want to, you can change that to a matte cap gray, or you can even go to a flat color material if you just want to see the textures here applied. I think a good one to kind of view your stuff is Skin Shader 4. So here's Skin Shader 4, and now we have our object sitting here within ZBrush. You're going to see she's a little bit off kilter. We can go ahead and fix that as well. One thing to consider, though, if we go in here to Subtool, what you can do is you can clean up this model in ZBrush. You can decimate it down. You can dynamesh it down, and maybe we'll do a video on this in a bit. But basically, you can clean up this model, you can Z-remesh it, you can re-topologize it however you want, you can decimate it down to a smaller file size, a game res size, or Z-remesh it if you want quads. You can make polygroups, you can UV layout within ZBrush to give it new UVs, and then you can actually export this model back out, go back into Photoscan here, go to Tools, Import, Mesh. You can import a brand new mesh with new UVs. Photoscan will read that in, and then you can use your point cloud data here, your dense point cloud, and your images to go ahead and project that texture detail onto your new mesh to get the highest quality result from Photoscan. I'm not going to go into that just yet, but that's another option you can do. If you are going to do that option, you don't want to move the model, or if you do, you want to make sure you can move it back so that it matches up with your point cloud within Photoscan. Another thing we can do is we can go down here to our texture map here. We can turn our textures off. Then you're going to see, oh, it's still textured. Well, that's your vertex color. So if you turn our texture on, let's kind of zoom into a detailed area here. So with textures on, you're going to see how nice and highly detailed it is. That's brought in from our texture here. Here, if you hover over this, you're going to see this is our texture map with the UVs it creates. Again, you can UV this however you want and bring it back into Photoscan and reproject your texture information if you want onto your new geometry. But if we turn that texture off, and then we go up here, you're going to see, because we can still see this texture, this is the vertex color data. If you want to get rid of that, just go ahead and turn off this little colorize brush here, and this is our actual geometry that we've created. Again, you can clean this up. We'll maybe probably do another video on this, on the cleanup process and reprojecting the texture details back on here. But for now, you can see how quickly and easily you can get just images taken in the round to get you a really decent result. And again, even getting that color information, that texture information to really help sell that object. Like I promised before, I did do this process on the raw images with masks included, and I did it with no masks included, then I did it with JPEGs. And we're going to talk about all the differences that we have here. So if we go in here to just a mask version, you see I'm in solo mode because I have all three kind of lined up together. So if we're just looking at the one that we shot with masks, then we'll kind of zoom in a little bit here, and then we flip over to no masks. I don't see a tremendous amount of difference as far as textures are concerned. The mask one might be a little bit sharper in the texture, so going through and having a Photoscan mask it for you and then rerunning the processes. Again, on this computer it wouldn't be a big deal. It would just take an extra 10 minutes. But the difference is pretty small. If I go down here and we turn our textures off for both of these, and instead of skin shade, let's go ahead and do our matte cap pearl here. So this is our mask, and this is our no mask. If we go up here to the hair, the masked version, processing our images with the masks included, seems to give us a slightly less noisy result, which is good. So the geometry, I think, the masks help. And then here we have the JPEG. So if we compare the JPEG, let's go ahead for now, and we won't talk about the textures now, but if we turn that texture off here, You see, this is the JPEG version. Very noisy. And then no mask is a little less noisy, and then mask here is much smoother here for us. So as far as geometry creation is concerned, having your masks available to you gives you a much nicer result on the geometry side. Now, if we go back here to the textures here, and we see the JPEG here, the JPEG results. Let's go ahead and turn textures back on for mask here. We'll go ahead and move mask down. Turn textures on so we can kind of flip between these. You're going to see the JPEG one is much more contrasty. It also looks a lot sharper here. But the good news is, even with this TIFF here, so if we want to export this TIFF, if you want to get this out of ZBrush, what you can do is you go ahead and down here to your texture map, and you can just select it in your textures here, and you go to Texture, Export, or you can even do it in this menu here. Just have that texture selected, go to Export. And girl statue no mask is fine. We'll go ahead and save it as a PSD. We'll go back down to this JPEG. Again, the JPEG does appear to be sharper, but it is a lot darker in the dark areas, and there's a lot less detail in the texture. That doesn't mean we can't get that detail from the TIFF here. We're just getting a lot more information, and this JPEG information has already been compressed. So now, in order to get this result from our raw images, what we could do is pre-process them before we took them in the Agisoft. But what I would prefer to do is let's go ahead and launch Photoshop. And let's go ahead and export this JPEG texture as well. So we have the texture here. I'm going to go ahead and hit clone texture. That's going to clone it over here. I'm going to go ahead and export. This is our JPEG export. That's fine. Now in Photoshop, I'm going to open both of those. Double click on the zoom tool here. So here we got two comparable areas. Now you might say the JPEG sharper, it's more contrasty. You can do the exact same thing with the TIFF file because it has the information available to do that. If you wanted to make modifications to this texture, you're not going to have as much information. So we go here to hit Control L to bring up the levels. You're going to see with the JPEG selected, here's my dark area here. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room in here. If I go back here to my TIFF and go to Control L, you're going to see we have a lot of correcting we can do in here. So you can, if you wanted to make these things or make these things similar or color correct or adjust your image in any way, you can do that. You have plenty of pixel information here within this TIFF to go ahead and do that. Of course, you'd probably want to do an adjustment layer. So we can go over here to levels and we can say, if you wanted to, I wouldn't suggest doing this, but you can go ahead and make that a little bit more contrasty. And you could even go in here to our unsharp mask to get us the results that we want. But I'm going to go ahead and leave those alone for now. And at the very least, you now are able to get a textured mesh out of Photoscan, processed from just simple photographs you've taken from your computer or from your camera, and start creating a library of photogrammetry assets to use in your own work.